One night where we both get what we need. I get my freedom, eventually. You get the resources to help 50 families who depend on you.
The charity gala at the Grand Millennium Hotel was winding down when Mia Washington realized she'd made a terrible mistake. She shouldn't have come. The borrowed dress that had seemed elegant in her cramped apartment now felt like a costume, and the invitation that had arrived mysteriously at the community center, where she volunteered suddenly, seemed like someone's cruel joke. She stood near the marble fountain in the lobby, debating whether to call a rideshare she couldn't afford or take the subway in heels that were already cutting into her feet. Around her, Seoul's elite filtered out in designer gowns and tailored suits, their laughter echoing off the vaulted ceilings like music she couldn't quite hear the melody to. "You're Mia Washington." The voice came from behind her, smooth, accented, and carrying the kind of certainty that suggested disagreement wasn't an option. Mia turned to find herself facing a man who looked like he'd stepped out of a corporate magazine. Tall, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her yearly rent, with sharp features softened only by unexpectedly kind eyes. His dark hair was styled with precision, and there was something about the way he held himself that screamed power. "I am," Mia said carefully, her social work instincts kicking in. She'd learned to read people in her line of work, and this man was studying her with the same intensity she usually reserved for assessing whether a family was hiding something during home visits. "Youngpoo Kang," he said, extending his hand, "though most people call me YP." Mia knew that name. Everyone in Seoul knew that name, even a social worker from Brooklyn who'd only been in Korea for 8 months. Kang Youngpoo was the 38-year-old CEO of Kang Industries, a tech conglomerate worth billions. His face appeared on magazine covers and news broadcasts with the regularity of weather reports. "Mr. Kang," she said, shaking his hand briefly, "I'm surprised you know who I am." "I make it my business to know everyone I invite to my events," he said with a slight smile. "You work at the Itaewon Community Center. You've been advocating for better housing conditions for migrant workers. Quite loudly, I'm told." Mia felt her cheeks warm. "So you're the mysterious benefactor who sent the invitation. Was it supposed to be a consolation prize? Throw the loud American girl a fancy party so she'll stop bothering your construction division about those substandard dormitories." Youngpoo's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes, amusement, maybe, or respect. "Actually, I wanted to meet the woman brave enough to camp outside my headquarters for 3 days straight with a megaphone and a petition. Security said you were very polite, even when they tried to remove you." "I'm always polite when I'm being forcibly relocated," Mia said dryly. "It's a skill you develop as a black woman in spaces that don't always want you there." "Walk with me," Youngpoo said suddenly. It wasn't quite a question, but it wasn't quite a command either. Something in between that made Mia curious despite herself. They walked through the hotel's sculpture garden, the sounds of the gala fatting behind them. Seoul's skyline glittered in the distance, a constellation of ambition and wealth that Mia had spent months trying to penetrate on behalf of people who lived in its shadows. "I need to ask you something," Youngpoo said, stopping near a modern sculpture that looked like frozen water. "And I need you to hear me out completely before you respond." Every alarm bell in Mia's head started ringing. She'd heard those words before, from politicians who wanted her to drop investigations, from wealthy donors who came with strings attached to their charity. "I'm listening." "In 1 week, I have to attend my grandmother's 80th birthday celebration," Youngpoo began, his voice carefully neutral. "In Korea, particularly in families like mine, there are expectations. My grandmother has been asking, demanding, really, to see me settled. Married ideally, or at least seriously involved with someone appropriate." "Appropriate," Mia repeated, her voice flat. She knew where this was going, and she already didn't like it. "Someone from the right family, with the right connections, who understands how to navigate high society and won't embarrass the Kang name," Youngpoo continued. He turned to face her directly. "Someone, in other words, exactly like you aren't." Mia blinked. Wow, points for honesty, I guess. "I'm not explaining this well," Youngpoo said, and for the first time he looked uncomfortable. "The truth is, my grandmother has already selected someone for me. Lee Jaiwoo, daughter of Lee Enterprises. Our families have been planning this merger, because that's what it is, a merger, not a marriage, since Jaiwoo and I were children. Next week's party is essentially the official announcement of our engagement. Congratulations, Mia said, confused about where she fit into this extremely wealthy person problem. I don't love her, Youngpoo said bluntly. We barely know each other beyond business dinners and charity functions. But more than that, I don't want to become another man who marries for strategic advantage while keeping a mistress on the side. I've watched too many men in my family do exactly that, treating marriage like a business contract and love like a luxury they purchase separately. I won't be that person. Mia crossed her arms. Mr. Kang, I really don't see what this has to do with me. I'm a social worker who makes $32,000 a year and lives in an apartment the size of your closet. I'm pretty sure I can't help you with your arranged marriage problem. That's exactly why you can help, Youngpoo said intensely. I need to show my grandmother that I'm serious about someone else. Someone so completely unsuitable that she'll realize she can't control this aspect of my life. Someone who will make her reconsider whether pushing me into this arrangement is worth the scandal. The implication hit Mia like a physical blow. You want me to pretend to be your girlfriend so your grandmother will be so horrified that she'll back off from her arranged marriage plans. You want to use me as… what, exactly? Your rebellion, your scandal. I want to pay you $500,000 for one night, Youngpoo said quietly. The number hung in the air between them like something solid. Mia opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. You're insane. I'm desperate, Youngpoo corrected. And you need money. The community center is about to lose its funding. I know because I looked into it after your protest. You're trying to raise $200,000 by the end of the month, or the center closes and 50 families lose their primary support system. Mia felt something cold settle in her stomach. You researched me. I research everyone I do business with, Youngpoo said. And make no mistake, this is a business proposition. $500,000. $200,000 goes to save your community center. The remaining $300,000 is yours to do with as you please. In exchange, you attend my grandmother's party as my girlfriend. You let them take photos. You endure their judgment and their prejudice, and there will be plenty of both, I won't lie to you about that. And then you walk away. One night, Mia. That's all I'm asking for. One night where I become a spectacle, Mia said bitterly. One night where your family looks at me like I'm some gold digger who corrupted their precious son. One night where I confirm every stereotype they probably have about black women, foreigners, poor people. One night where you're brave enough to do what I can't do alone, Youngpoo interrupted. Which is stand up to the weight of family expectation and tradition. One night where we both get what we need. I get my freedom, eventually. You get the resources to help 50 families who depend on you. Mia stared at him, trying to find the angle, the trap. In her work, she'd learned that when something seemed too good to be true, it usually was. But she'd also learned that sometimes desperate people made desperate offers, and desperation had its own kind of honesty. Why me? She asked finally. There must be 100 women in Seoul who would do this. Because you're someone I actually respect, Youngpoo said simply. Because when I watched you stand outside my building with that megaphone, calling out my company's labor practices, you weren't doing it for attention or money. You were doing it because you actually cared about those workers. Because despite everyone telling you it was pointless, that you'd never get a meeting with someone like me, you showed up every single day at 8 a.m. with coffee and your petition, and that terrible megaphone that gave my security team headaches. He stepped closer, and Mia found herself unable to look away from his eyes, dark, serious, and tired in a way that made him seem both older and younger than 38. I need someone I can trust not to turn this into something more than it is, Youngpoo continued. Someone who won't develop expectations beyond our agreement. Someone strong enough to walk into the lion's den and walk out again without looking back. You spent 3 days facing down my security team without flinching. I think you can handle one dinner party with my family. Mia thought about the community center, about Mrs. Kim who was trying to get her son into physical therapy after his construction accident, about the Martinez family who'd finally found stable housing through their job placement program, about the 50 other families whose lives would be upended if the center closed. She thought about her student loans, her mother's medical bills back in Brooklyn, the constant calculation of whether she could afford both groceries and subway fare each week. She thought about how much she hated that this choice was even being presented to her, and she thought about how much she hated that she was actually considering it. "I need time to think," she said. "You have until tomorrow at noon," Young-poo said, pulling out a business card and writing something on the back. "My private number. Call me with your answer." "But Mia," he paused as he handed her the card, "I meant what I said. I respect you. This isn't about making a mockery of you or using you as entertainment. This is about two people helping each other solve impossible problems." He walked away, leaving Mia standing alone in the sculpture garden with a business card. She sat in her tiny apartment and everything at the same time. The business card on her coffee table like an accusation, and tried to logic her way through a decision that seemed to defy logic entirely. By sunrise, she'd made lists, pros and cons, risks and benefits, ethical implications and practical realities. The cons list was longer. The pros list had bigger numbers. At 11:47 a.m., she called the number on the card. Young-poo answered on the first ring. "Ms. Washington." "I have conditions," Mia said, skipping any preamble. If she was going to do this, she'd do it on her terms. "Non-negotiable conditions." "I'm listening." "First, a contract. Everything in writing, signed by lawyers. The money goes into escrow before the party. If you back out, I still get paid. If your family does something that crosses a line I specify in advance, I can leave and I still get paid." "Agreed," Young-poo said without hesitation. "Second, I control my own narrative. If reporters ask me questions, I answer honestly. Within the bounds of our agreement, obviously, but I won't read from a script. I won't play dumb or quiet or whatever your PR team thinks is least threatening." There was a pause. That could make things more complicated. "That's my condition," Mia said firmly. "I won't pretend to be someone I'm not. You said you wanted someone strong enough to face your family. Well, strength means authenticity. Take it or leave it." "Taken," Young-poo said, and she could hear something like approval in his voice. "What else?" "Third, you donate an additional $100,000 to 3 organizations of my choosing. Organizations that work with migrant workers, housing rights, and racial justice education in Korea. Anonymous donations, no press releases, no tax write-off photo ops." "That's not part of our agreement," Young-poo said, his tone cooling slightly. "No, it's the price of my conscience," Mia shot back. "You want to use the optics of dating a black woman to scandalize your family. Fine, but you're going to put your money where that scandal is and actually support communities that face the prejudices you're counting on your family to display. Otherwise, this whole thing is just exploitation with extra steps." The silence stretched long enough that Mia thought she'd pushed too far. Then Young-poo laughed, a real laugh, surprised and genuine. "You're going to be a nightmare for my family," he said, and it sounded like a compliment. "Okay, 100,000 split among 3 organizations of your choosing. Anything else?" "One more thing," Mia said, her voice dropping. "After this is over, your company actually fixes those dormitories. Not eventually, not when it's convenient. Within 6 months. Full renovations, proper safety standards, everything I asked for in my petition. That's the real price, Mr. Kang. You want me to help you escape a marriage you don't want. You help me protect the workers your company has been exploiting." "Those renovations would cost millions," Young-poo said quietly. "Then it's a good thing you're a billionaire," Mia replied. "Do we have a deal or not?" Another pause, longer this time. Mia held her breath, half hoping he'd say no, half terrified he would. "We have a deal," Young-poo said finally. "My lawyer will draw up the contracts today. We'll meet tomorrow to review them together, make any adjustments you want. The party is in 6 days. That gives us time to prepare." "Prepare how?" Mia asked, suddenly aware of how many details she hadn't considered. "We'll need to spend time together," Young-poo said. "My family will ask questions, how we met, how long we've been seeing each other, what we have in common. Our story needs to be believable, and the only way to make it believable is to actually build some genuine rapport. Can you clear your schedule for the next 5 days? Mia thought of her caseload, her appointments, her responsibilities. Then she thought of the community center's eviction notice and felt the decision solidify. I'll make it work. Good. I'll have my driver pick you up tomorrow at 9 a.m. Wear something comfortable. We have a lot to discuss. After hanging up, Mia sat staring at her phone, wondering what exactly she'd just agreed to. The answer came in the form of a text message 30 seconds later, a confirmation from Young Poo's law firm requesting her availability for a contract review meeting. This was really happening. The next 5 days passed in a blur that felt like someone else's life. Young Poo's driver, a quietly professional man named Mr. Cho, picked her up each morning in a Mercedes that seemed designed to make her tiny apartment building look even more shabby by comparison. The first day, they went to Young Poo's private office, a minimalist space in the Kang Industries tower with a view that made Mia understand why people thought money could buy happiness. They sat across from each other at a conference table, lawyers flanking them both, and negotiated the strangest contract Mia had ever seen. Young Poo's legal team tried to insert clauses about media appearances and non-disclosure agreements that would have essentially silenced her forever. Mia's lawyer, a fierce woman named Grace Park, who'd volunteered her services after Mia explained the situation, struck them down one by one. My client is not signing away her story rights, Grace said firmly. She's attending one party, not selling her soul. By the end of the session, they had an agreement both sides could live with. Mia watched Young Poo sign his name with a fountain pen that probably cost more than her laptop, and felt the weight of what she was doing settle more heavily. Now the real work begins, Young Poo said after the lawyers left. Tell me about yourself, Mia Washington, not the resume version, the real version. So she did. Over coffee that tasted like it had been made by someone who understood coffee as an art form, Mia told him about growing up in Brooklyn, about her mother who cleaned office buildings at night so Mia could go to college during the day. She told him about her sister, who died from complications of diabetes because they couldn't afford insulin, and how that loss had pushed her into social work. She told him about coming to Seoul on a fellowship program and falling in love with a city that didn't quite know what to do with her. Young Poo listened with an intensity that was unnerving. He didn't interrupt, didn't check his phone, didn't do any of the things people usually did when someone else was talking. He just listened, like her story mattered. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. Your sister, I'm sorry. Thank you, Mia said, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. My brother died too, Young Poo said abruptly. Car accident when he was 22. I was 25, just starting to take over parts of the company. He was the charming one. The one everyone loved. I was the serious one, the responsible one. When he died, I became the only one. All of my grandmother's expectations, my father's legacy, everything the family needed, it all landed on me. He turned to look out the window, his profile sharp against the Seoul skyline. I'm not asking for sympathy. I know how privileged my life is. But sometimes I wonder who I would have been if I'd had the freedom to choose differently. If the weight of the Kang name hadn't been the only weight I was allowed to carry. Mia studied him, this man who could buy almost anything, but apparently couldn't buy his way out of his own family's expectations. Is that why you're doing this? Because you want to know who you'd be without all that weight? Maybe, Young Poo said. Or maybe I'm just tired of pretending that the weight doesn't crush me sometimes. The vulnerability in his voice surprised her. This wasn't the confident CEO who'd approached her at the gala. This was someone who'd learned to hide his exhaustion so well that most people never saw it. Okay, Mia said. So here's our story. We met at one of your construction sites during my protest. You came down personally to see what the commotion was about. We argued. You were impressed by my passion. I was impressed that you actually listened instead of just calling security. You asked me to coffee to discuss the workers' concerns. One coffee became dinner. Dinner became more dinners. And here we are unexpectedly falling for each other despite coming from completely different worlds. Young Poo turned back to her, a slow smile spreading across his face. That's actually not bad. It's close enough to the truth that we won't have to remember lies, and it makes me look less like a complete corporate villain. Don't push it, Mia said. You're still the guy who owned those substandard dormitories in the first place. Fair, Youngpoo acknowledged. Though in my defense, I didn't know how bad they were until you showed up with your megaphone. My facilities manager had been filing reports that everything was up to code. Turns out he was taking bribes to look the other way. And you fired him? Mia asked. Immediately, Youngpoo said, along with 2 others who were in on it. Then I ordered a full audit of all our worker housing. The renovations you demanded, they were already in the works. I was going to announce them next month as part of our corporate responsibility initiative. Mia felt something shift in her understanding of him. So I wasted 3 days standing outside your building. Not at all, Youngpoo said with a slight smile. You accelerated the timeline by about 6 months and made sure I couldn't quietly sweep it under the rug. Your protest got media attention. Now if I don't follow through, everyone will know. You held me accountable in a way most people can't. That's why I respect you. The rest of the week followed a similar pattern. Each day, they spent hours together, talking, sharing meals, building the kind of comfortable rapport that would make their relationship believable. Youngpoo took her to his favorite restaurant, a tiny place in Gangnam, where the owner greeted him by name and treated Mia with a warmth that surprised her. She took him to the community center, introduced him to families she worked with, let him see why this mattered so much to her. On the 4th day, Youngpoo's stylist arrived at Mia's apartment with 3 racks of dresses for the party. No, Mia said immediately, looking at the designer gowns that probably cost more than her car. I can't accept these. They're not gifts, Youngpoo said calmly. He'd been standing in her tiny kitchen, looking oddly at home despite his expensive suit. They're costumes for the role we're playing. You can return them after if you want or keep them. I don't care. But you need to look the part tomorrow night, and I'm not going to send you into that situation without proper armor. Mia ran her hand over a midnight blue gown that shimmered like water. This feels wrong. What feels wrong, Youngpoo said quietly, is that you have to worry about what you wear to be taken seriously. But we don't live in the world we wish we lived in. We live in this one. And in this world, appearance matters to people like my family. So let's use that against them. In the end, Mia chose a dress that was elegant but not ostentatious, deep emerald green that complemented her skin tone and made her feel powerful rather than costumed. When she tried it on, Youngpoo's expression shifted into something she couldn't quite read. What? She asked, suddenly self-conscious. Nothing, he said quickly. You look appropriate for the party, that's all. But Mia caught something in his eyes before he looked away, something that reminded her this was supposed to be fake, and that the most dangerous part of any good lie was when you started believing it yourself. The night before the party, Youngpoo called her at midnight. Are you ready? He asked. Mia thought about the contract signed and filed, the money already transferred to escrow, the community center's rent paid through the end of the year. She thought about 50 families who would keep their support system, about workers who would get safer housing, about all the good that would come from one uncomfortable night. No, she said honestly, but I'll do it anyway. That's all anyone can ask, Youngpoo said. I'll pick you up at 6 p.m. tomorrow. The party starts at 7, and Mia. Yeah. Thank you. I know this isn't easy. I know what I'm asking you to endure. Just thank you. After hanging up, Mia lay in bed staring at her ceiling, wondering if she'd just made the best decision of her life or the worst one. Tomorrow night, she'd find out which.